So you've had your first drop and or your second drop or your third drop and it flopped. And you don't really exactly know why. Okay, well, in this video, I'm going to quickly brief the three main reasons why I've seen that clothing brand founders just fail when it comes to the drops. And things don't work, things don't convert, your sale just went downstream. There's a lot of things to cover, so let's go over it. So we have this Notion document, and once again, if you want this resource, feel free to see it in the link in the description. Don't worry, I'm not one of them guys that say I'll link it but don't. But yeah, this is actually the reason why clothing brands, I guess, not it doesn't grow, or when it comes to your drop, it didn't go successful. Okay, so the first thing I want you to understand is before you blame your product, your niche, or algorithm, read this. Now, most founders I speak to are stuck in the same place. The product is good, the brand looks decent, they're posting, they've had at least one drop that sold, but month after month the number barely moves. Okay, they're somewhere between 2k to 8k. Now this is in pounds. If you're in dollars, this is once again applicable for you, and they cannot figure out why. Okay, so here's what no one is actually telling you. Your brand isn't growing because of a decision you made or didn't make. Your brand isn't growing because of a decision you made or didn't make 3 to 6 months ago. And that is actually truth. Like, you've not made a decision, or you've made a decision around 3 to 6 months ago, and that is affecting your brand. And you might be raising an eyebrow thinking that that's not possible, but you have to consider, well, like lead times and how long it takes to get your bulk order from China or manufacturers and things like this, right? So if you're not actually putting into consideration what the hell or what decision I made that might have ruined my brand, or if I did a successful drop and it didn't go well, you're being ignorant, and that ignorance is, well, not allowing the brand to grow, right? So it's usually one of the three decisions that we've seen that when it comes to if your brand isn't succeeding, whether you're dropping, whether you're constantly dropping, or whether you just have products on your website. Now, obviously in this document and video, I'm going to show you exactly what those three decisions are, not to give you a checklist, not to sell you something straight away. So I'm not here to sell you something, just free information, because I genuinely believe if you understand why the problem exists, you will know whether you are the right person to fix it alone or whether you need someone who has fixed it before. And obviously, just for full transparency, I am a consultant and we help brands scale profitably from 4 figures, 5 figures, all the way to 6 figures. It doesn't matter which point you are at, but we install sequences that allow you to scale. But we'll talk about that at the end. Now, the real reason brands stall, okay, we found 3 reasons. It's inventory blindness, margin compressions, and running ads too early. Now, this whole document will go over everything, but I'm going to go over a Miro board and actually break this down a lot better. So let's go to that. We're here at the board and let's move it. Like I said, most founders are stuck in the same place. The product is good, the brand looks decent, they're posting, had at least one drop that sold month after month, but the number barely moves. Okay, and like I said, it's because you made a decision or didn't make a decision 3 to 6 months ago. So we're gonna look at the first real problem, right? So when a brand stops growing, the founder's first instinct is always the same: better content, new colorways, TikTok ads, a rebrand. Like, genuinely speaking, if your drop didn't go well or if something isn't selling right, your first thought is to make a new product, and that's the worst possible thing you can do right now. Making a new product, making a new colorway, or thinking that, oh, you know, it's orange, you know, my hoodie was orange, maybe people don't like orange. Well, it's clearly because of a sequence problem and a lack of systems problem. You're trying to do the right things but in the wrong order, and we talk about this all the time with the clients we work with, right? You can't now make a new colorway and make a new hoodie if you don't even know, or if your current product didn't actually sell to anyone. We need to first discover the metrics and the data. What is the data telling us, right? We need to be able to identify, why didn't people buy from the first drop? Was it genuinely the product? Because sometimes you're going to come, like, for example, I run some free consultation for brands, and I've talked to hundreds of brand founders, right? So many people. And whenever we're doing these consultations, they come to me and they're like, yo, bro, look, I think it's my product that's the problem. And they bring up economics. But when I talk about the website, they get shocked. Because if you're running paid ads, for example, and your copy is good, but like, you know, you're going over to, you know, the customer clicks the ad and then gets 5 reasons why your hoodie is the best, you're not going to convert that sale, right? So like I said, if your first instinct is better content, new colorways, without actually checking the data and metrics, that's one of the biggest problems you're making, right? Yeah. Now, like I said, you have to understand that these are surface level responses to a problem that lives underneath. We call these symptoms of a problem, right? Engagement is a symptom of a problem. People not buying your product is a symptom of the problem. It isn't actually the real problem, right? And like I said, they're surface level and they don't work. So if you try to fix low engagement by making better content, it won't convert and you won't get a sale. Yes, you'll get 1 million views video, you might, but you won't get any sales from it, and then you'll be shocked. Well, that's because you haven't had the right sequences that will nurture your customer to buy the product. And like I said, the reason your brand isn't growing is not visible from the outside. It doesn't show up in your follower count or engagement. So you're not going to see this in your follower, right? So like I said, it lives in typically 3 places, right? So It lives in number one, how you are buying and managing your inventory, what your margins look like after all costs, and whether you are spending money on ads before the business can support it. Now, if you're doing organic content in order to market your products, that is fine, but you have to understand that you're going to reach a certain level and a certain bottleneck. The only problem with organic outreach is that the fact you can't actually target your ICP or your target audience. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, you can share your clothes to a lot of people. And do you know what the funny thing is? A lot of brand founders, when they come on these consultation calls, and a lot of the clients we work with prior to us signing them, they always said the same thing. I just need more people to see my brand. But it actually doesn't mean shit. I've seen brands that get 10 million views but only get 50 sales. What the fuck is that? 50 sales from 10 million views? Even if a lot of people saw your product, would it actually fit their needs? And that's the problem, and that's the only constraint with organic content. That's why you have to invest in paid acquisition. But knowing when to actually run ads is very, very important. Being smart with it, right? And if you're trying to reach everyone, you're not going to sell to anyone. You know this as a brand founder yourself, right? So like I said, if you're a brand founder, every brand is stuck at this stage and has at least one of these problems. Most have two, some have three, and they don't know it yet. So you could either have an inventory problem, a margin problem, or a paid acquisition problem. So we're going to look over at the inventory problem first, and then maybe you can diagnose this yourself and see this. This is similar to how we work with our clients, by the way. If you're interested in what we do, you can check the link in the description to see how we work. But once again, it'll be a strategy call. I can't be asked pitching you. Like, I know, full transfer, I genuinely can't be asked going through a sales process and trying to sign you. Like, if you see the stuff we do and you like it, then for sure, book a call and let's get on board, man. I would love to work with you. So let's look at inventory blindness, right? So this is the first mistake I see in founders, right? So basically, what is inventory blindness? Basically, you are making decisions without knowing your actual sell-through rate, your days of stock, or whether you have cash to fund the next inventory cycle. So I see a lot of brand founders do this, right? For example, what they'll do is that they'll order a bunch of stock, they'll reorder a bunch of stuff, and because they think the market likes it, or because it sold out the first time, they think it'll sell out the next time. Or for example, if you're not a drop only site, if you're a 24 site and you're constantly selling out, they tend to think that, okay, cool, all I need to do now is quickly just, reorder a bunch of stock before the next stock cycle, and a bunch of people will buy and make profit. This isn't a get quick rich scheme, as you know this yourself. So if you're trying to get all this stock and trying to sell it quickly, or you're trying to, wipe out all your stock from your manufacturer in China, you're just wasting a lot of money, right? And it eats into your margins. Now, this is the most common problem in brands doing around 2 to 6K per month. I've seen this as well. And it actually is one of the quietest. It doesn't feel like a problem because you buy stock, some sells, you buy more, and it feels like progress. But the thing is, you're not actually scaling. Right? Your clothing brand isn't genuinely succeeding because what you're doing is you're buying and you're selling. You're buying and you're selling. That isn't actually scaling. You're not nurturing your audience to buy into the next product, into the next colorway. There is no drop. There is no increase in price. Like, we're going to talk about pricing as well, because that's a very big bottleneck. But now what actually happens is you buy 50 units because that's what you bought last time. 20 sell in week 1. 30 sit, cash is now locked in product, and you haven't moved, right? The next drop is coming, but you don't have cash to fund it because it's still sitting in unsold units from last one, right? And I see this happen all the time because founders tend to get too excited, let's say, and they order a bunch of stock quickly because they think that, okay, cool, a bunch of people are looking at our product, we gotta get our, our target audience ready, or maybe if I order a bunch of stock, I'll get so much people to buy, and then when the drop comes, they'll also buy. But what you're doing right now is you're training people to not to buy your next product. In fact, you're training people to not even buy the drop. You're training them to buy what you currently have, and because it's such an exciting piece and you haven't added that level of scarcity, no one is going to buy the upcoming drop, or you just won't have enough money because some will sell and some won't, if that makes sense. And that's another big bottleneck when it comes to outreach too, right? Now, one thing I want to make clear is that you're not stuck because of low demand. You are stuck because your inventory decisions are connected from your actual sales velocity, right? So what you're doing is that because your inventory, because you want to reorder a bunch of products, you're reordering, and your inventory decision is based off emotion, right? And you're like, okay, cool. If I have one unit, if I do a bulk order of 50, and at each unit I sell them for like $78, and if I theoretically sell them all, then I'll make like 2K. That's the idea, right? That's the hope, okay? But what you're not accounting for is the fact that you've spent, for example, like 2K or 3K to get the order, and because, well, let's just say your gross margins are like 30% or whatever, and it's not even covering your cogs or whatever, right? What's gonna happen is when you order inventory and it doesn't sell, you don't make money. And any money you make has to pay for the things that, or for this previous inventory decision. Because prior to this, you were already profitable. So you reordered stock because you wanted to make more money, right? You wanted to reorder to make more profit, but that just kind of cooked you. So now, like I said, this creates a cycle. So understocking styles that could sell, overstocking the ones that don't, and constantly operating in reactive mode because there is no cash buffer to plan ahead, right? So right now I need to ask yourself three things, okay? Do you know your sell-through rate from your last drop? That's another important metric. That's something you need to discover. Do you actually know your sell-through rate? How many people that came to your site actually bought the product? Okay. The next thing is, do you know how many days of stock you have left at your current velocity? That's another important thing. How many days of stock do you have left at your current velocity? And the third thing is, do you know how much cash you need to fund your next inventory cycle? Because like I said, if the drop is coming and you need to fund for that inventory cash cycle and you're not ready, you're cooked, right? Like I said, if the answer to any of these is no, this is your problem, not your content, not your product, this. So you will think that, you know, your drop isn't selling, or like, for example, and this is like a symptom, right? So like I said, this could be one of your bottlenecks, right? So inventory, a lack of inventory or lack of planning, and the bad inventory decisions that prevent you from getting the stuff. Like I said, you could be selling the wrong thing. It's not actually about your product, it's about what you're selling. You're selling things to people who don't want it, right? There's no demand for the orange hoodie, but you're stocking it for some random reason. So that's why, right? So like I'm saying, that's what I'm trying to say here. You need to ask yourself these three questions: your sell-through rate. You need to know how many days of stock you have left at your current velocity, and you also need to know how much cash you need to fund in your next inventory cycle. Now, let's go over the next mistake here. So the next mistake we see is margin compression. Now, margin compression is one of them things where, for example, you're basically killing your margins, right? You're doing this unintentionally, but it's something that's killing into your profit. And this is essentially when you sell out, but for some reason you have a bunch of revenue, but you have no profit, like you have no money for yourself, right? So like I said, revenue is going up, orders is going up, but you're working harder for the same money or less. And that is margin compression, and it is completely silent. Now, that's the thing about margin compression. It doesn't feel bad in the moment. The sales notifications will be coming in, revenue will look good. So you'll see 100K in a Shopify dashboard, or like, let's say 10K or 5K or 3K, for example. But when you actually sit down and look at what you're keeping after every cost, the number is much smaller than you think. And this is when you need to account for things like your contribution margin. Now, this is when it kind of comes from three places. And number one, discounting to move stock. So I see a lot of brand founders do this. You discount your products. For example, you throw a 50% off sale. It's not an irresistible acquisition offer. It's not even there to get clients to buy. It's just to get rid of stock, right? So the units move, so you will actually sell your products, but the margin needed to make the product profitable disappears, right? You've traded cash flow for margin. So what you've done is, because you haven't sold out and because of a bad inventory decision, or because you have too much stock, you discount all of them, right? So you discount them for 50% off, and let's say, for example, your average order value is $105, right? Well, you discount it, now it's $55. You've just discounted your average order value to 105 to 55 because you just want to get rid of the units. Now, you actually forgot why you did 50% why you did 105 or average order value in the first place, because that accounted for shipping, COGS, fees, and keeping you profitable. But when you cut that in half, now you're only left with like $5 profit per sale, and that just doesn't make sense. So yes, you'll have a 5K revenue in your dashboard, but you'll only be taking away like maybe 900 in profit, and that's kind of like very, very upsetting. The second thing as well we see is underpricing, right? So underpricing is a very, very big bottleneck and constraint we see in a lot of brand founders. This is essentially, you set price based on what competitors charge, but competitors don't have your cost structure. You've priced against someone else's business without knowing your own numbers. And this is the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen in brands. I posted this TikTok whilst talking about selling your products or making your brand identity. And one person was talking about they like to make their products affordable, right? And that's commendable, but only if your manufacturing cost is like 10p, okay? If you're underpricing your product, right, clearly your product is crap, okay, or it's just not good enough, or you're just being an idiot. Like, I'm sorry to say that, but really and truly, like, if you're underpricing your product and if your average order value does not account for every other thing, you're not going to profit. Now, whether you want to be a good Samaritan and, sell your products and you only make $1 per sale, that's completely up to you. Then you don't need to be watching this video. But if you're actually frustrated with why your thing is done, you need to look at your tracksuit, you need to look at your hoodie, you need to look at your t-shirt, look at the product you're selling and wonder, am I actually selling this according to my numbers, right? Don't sell it according to how cool the hoodie looks. Don't sell it according to your competitors. Sell it against numbers like, for example, your contribution margin, how much you want to contribute, what's your net profit margin, right? What do you want to keep? How much you need to pay for people, right? Each unit should cover those things. And if you're selling your product for something that doesn't cover all of it, you're not going to make any money, right? And another thing, so there's a bunch of things that people don't account for. These are the hidden margin killers, like your platform fees, chargebacks, refunds, all these things, shipping overages or overseas, customer service time, These eat 8 to 12% percentage points of your gross margin before you do a single thing wrong. Now, if you're not careful and account for example, platform fees, right? I don't know. I think Shopify takes like a 1.5 to 2.5% fee. I don't know, something like that. But if you're not accounting for that, think about that, right? So 1,000, 2.5, that's like at least them taking like, I don't know, like, let's do the math here, right? So let's do the math. We're gonna do 1,000, right? So obviously they're gonna take £25 every $1,000 you make. But once again, if your average order value, let's say, is 105, then what they're gonna do is they'll take like $3 per sale. Now, yes, obviously that's something that doesn't seem like a big number, but it can accumulate and add up, right? And that's just a platform fee. Let's just say, for example, and then you have to account for like refunds. If people refund, that's all the money back, like all the money gone. Chargebacks, money gone. You know, all these things, right? Returns, all these things, right? So that's another thing. So you need to account for your hidden margin killers, okay? And that's a big mistake. If your pricing doesn't account, or if your margins don't account for all these hidden costs, you're not going to make a lot of money. Now, let's look at what it looks like in real numbers, right? So let's say, for example, you're selling a hoodie for £65. It looks like a 40% margin, which sounds healthy, okay? But by the time you account for cost of goods, shipping fees, payment processing, occasional returns, shipping costs, all these things, you might be sitting at an 18% contribution margin. That is terrible, right? 18% on a $65 hoodie, that's £11.70 per unit. And now at that margin, you actually can't run ads profitably. You cannot discount to drive volume. You cannot fund growth without cash bleeding on every single order, right? Because you have to understand your contribution margin accounts for what you pay yourself, what you pay, like, for example, your team, what you pay for all these different things, ads, everything, right? So it's very important that your contribution margin accounts for these things. Now, like I said, most founders at this stage don't know this number. They know their revenue, they know their rough profit, but they don't know their real contribution margin per product, right? And every decision about pricing, promotion, and scaling is built on a number that isn't accurate. Like I'm saying, like if you're pricing your stuff on feeling or emotional, or the idea that because my tracksuit has waffle in it and, you know, it's got some distressing, it should be $80, when your manufacturing cost per unit is like $65, and that's a crazy example, then you're being an idiot, right? You cannot sell a hoodie for $65 if it costs you like at least $45 to make or $35 to make, right? You need to be like, your profit margins need to cover everything and keep you profitable, okay? Now, if you don't believe you should be charging your product for that good and for that price point, then that just goes to show that your product probably just isn't worth that much, right? Or it just isn't good enough. And if it was good enough, you'd feel confident enough to charge that much, right? So I need you to ask yourself as well these 3 questions. Number 1, do you know your real contribution margin, or what is it? Not your gross margin, not revenue minus COGS, but margin after every variable cost. That's another thing. When did you last review your pricing structure against your actual cost structure? Okay, that's another question. Like, when you actually look at your pricing and be like, okay, $85 taking away my COGS. When's the last time you pin them against each other? And the last thing, are you discounting to move slow stock, and how often? Now, I'm not going to advocate against discounting. I think sometimes discounting can be helpful to get rid of stock. Once again, if stock is just sitting in your warehouse, that is just money sitting there and no one is going to buy. So I get it, but discounting can be avoided in order to, like, discounting to get rid of stock can be avoided if you just do the right inventory and make the right inventory decisions, right? Now, like I said, if you can't answer these questions clearly, margin compression might be happening to you right now. You just can't see it yet. Now, the last mistake I see in a lot of founders here, and, you know, this is kind of like a whole in-depth framework we're going to go over, is when they run their ads too early. Like I said, so this is probably the biggest mistake I see in founders, running ads too early. Like, I talked to this brand founder, he ran ads for like a few months, I think, spent £700, only got like 5 sales within a few months, from October to like February or January. Shocking, right? Why are you running ads for that long and, you know, you only generated 5 sales? That just doesn't make any sense, right? So when it comes to running ads, and obviously this is where we come in, this is our expertise, basically running ads is spending money on paid advertising before the business foundation is financially sound, and this is the most expensive mistake in direct to consumer clothing. So if you're running any form of Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Google ads, without actually properly having things in place and knowing things and knowing your numbers, then you're probably not going to profit a lot. In fact, you're not going to make any money. You might generate revenue, but not make any money. Okay. Now, every ads course, every agency, every how I scale to 50K per month video will tell you that ads are the answer, right? Paid ads don't fix a broken business, they accelerate it in whatever direction it's already going. One thing you need to understand about paid ads is that ads are a distribution system. Your product is the thing that's going to get distributed. Paid ads is simply going to take your product and just put it in front of more people, right? And then convert them and push it enough times in order for them to actually buy. But if your product isn't good, in fact, if your business doesn't make sense to run ads, why the hell are you running ads, right? If your numbers aren't in place, if your conversion, if your website isn't ready, all these different things aren't ready before you run ads, it just genuinely doesn't make sense to run ads. You're not going to profit, right? Now let's look at and once again, let's look at the two problems, right? Say for example your margins are just compressed and they just don't make sense, right? Your profit margins, your contribution margin, like I said, is 18%, okay? And there's no money to run ads, right? Ads make that worse faster. You're not losing money at scale instead of at your current volume. So if you're running ads when your margins are low, what's going to happen is ads are just going to eat into your profit margins and you won't be able to make any money, right? And another thing, if your inventory is mismanaged, a successful campaign creates fulfillment crisis. You sell out, counter stock in time, momentum dies, and you've burned ad spend to create a problem you weren't even ready for, okay? Now, when it comes to your average order value as well, if your AOV is too low for your customer acquisition cost, and your customer acquisition cost is how much it costs you to actually acquire a customer, that's through ads. So the way you would calculate that is how much you spend on ads divided by how many customers you got. So if you spent $1,000 on ads and you got 50 customers, then that's a $20 customer acquisition cost, right? Every pound or dollar you spend in ads, you are losing. Win with better data on exactly how you are losing it, right? So all ads is going to reveal to you is where you're losing, and you're just basically paying for data to know where you're losing it, right? Now, let's look at the math in plain terms, okay? Because it's very important that we understand this. The AOV, right? The average order value is £55. Your contribution margin is 20%, and your margin per order is £11, right? Now, your cost to acquire a customer through paid ads is 18, a low number in most content. So that's very, very low. Usually it's like, it can vary. It could be like 25 to like 30, or maybe 20, or in fact, it could be way higher than that, to be fair. It kind of varies on brands, right? Now, let's look at that. 11 minus 18, that is £7 per sale, okay? That is £7 every single time you make a sale. And it doesn't make sense, because if, for example, your customer acquisition cost is so low, then why the hell are you losing £7 every single sale? Well, it's because your contribution margin is terrible, right? And your margin per order is terrible. So every order you generate through ads loses you $7. You cannot creative test your way out of that. You cannot optimize your way out of that. The unit economics don't work. So what's happening is, even if, for example, you get a sale from ads, even if, for example, you have a high ROAS, right, you get a return on ad spend, you're losing £7 per sale. It just doesn't make sense, right? The ads problem compounds with the margin problem. Founders who have compressed margins and run ads early end up hemorrhaging cash while building momentum, and they don't understand why. Okay, so you're just going in there and you're just kind of ruining your cash. You're just scruffing it all around the place, right? And by the time they figure out, they often spend 2 to 5K in ad spend that didn't even need to happen yet. Okay, now when it comes to spending ads, if ads aren't working and you're running ads, I need you to ask yourself the first question: does your current contribution margin support a profitable customer acquisition cost, right? So at your contribution margin, like your margins per order, right? So like I said, your average order value is £55. Your contribution margin is 20%. Does that support it? No, because we do 11, take out 18, okay? Because we need to do your contribution margin or per order, taking away your customer acquisition cost. Now, the next thing as well is, have you verified there is organic demand for this product before people are paying to amplify it? Because if you're trying to run ads on a product that people don't even want yet, what do you think ads are going to do? Do you think ads are going to somehow convince people to get your product? No. If there is already organic demand, and people might forget, what ads will do is that they will remind them constantly and get them to buy. Ads don't go there and like magically make people want your product. They amplify the need already in the market, right? If your next campaign bought 100 orders, would your cash flow and inventory support it? If, for example, you brought in 100 orders, would you profit from that? And if your answer is no, well, you definitely have one of these 3 mistakes in here, right? So like I said, you're not ready for paid ads, and that is not failure, that is information. Now, the brands that scale the fastest are not the ones that ran ads the earliest. They ran ads at the right time. So what now? Well, let's look at this, right? Now, you've read just about 3 problems that stall every clothing brand at this stage. One of these 2 things are true for you. So either you have option A or option B. Now, option A, okay, is you already know which one of these are yours. You've been sitting on it, you felt it, you didn't know the language for it yet, and the next step is figuring out the fix. And that fix is different for every brand depending on where the constraint actually lives, right? And with option B, you're not sure which one is yours, or you might suspect there might be more than one, and in most cases it is, because typically it's kind of like the domino effect, right? You make the inventory problem, and from inventory it falls into your margins, and then you try to run ads because you think ads will fix it, and then you have all 3 problems, right? So the most valuable thing you can do right now is get a clear picture of what your numbers actually say before you make any new moves. And whatever problem you're at right now, that's exactly what we work with. We're able to fix and find the main constraint and then be able to run ads profitably for you when it makes sense. Like I said, like if you're running a clothing brand and you're doing anywhere from like 2 to 5k per month, or maybe 5 to 10k per month, or 10 to 20k per month, and for some reason you just can't scale past that, then by all means feel free to book a call with us. We'll host a strategy session. We'll look at the main bottleneck in your business, and then if it makes sense for us to move forward, we will. But if not, then like honestly, you just get a free resources and a bit of clarity on your business. But once again, I need you guys to understand that if you're falling into one of these categories, the problem isn't new content, it isn't running more ads, it isn't trying to make a new colorway or a new product that people are going to buy. That's not going to fix the business. The problems you're having is that the foundations aren't set properly, right? And without setting the foundations, you won't be able to have a brand or business that actually makes sense. So once again, if any of these are your problems, then by all means, you need to look into fixing them. And that's either with me or you do it by yourself. If you made it throughout the whole video and if anything I said made sense, feel free to subscribe. You know, it's completely free. I'm sure you know that. And on this channel, you're going to see a lot more insights on value on how to position your offer and product properly in order to scale profitably, if that makes sense with your clothing brand. So yeah, look forward to speaking with you soon. If you book a call, take care and goodbye.